Am I the jerk for making my partner pay rent? First time using this subreddit, so sorry if anything is wrong. I just really need to see if I'm being unreasonable here. I, a 23-year-old male, met my girlfriend, a 20-year-old female, at university. I dropped out due to a job offer and planned to stay in the town that the university was in around 2 years ago, as the offer is for a job that won't start for a few years yet. This is normal in my field. My girlfriend failed last year at university due to stress and family matters. Over the summer, she decided that she wanted to be closer to her family. We agreed to move to my hometown, as it's only around a 90-minute commute from where her family lives. It also has a great job opportunity for me in the short term, and a university that she could transfer to a 40-minute commute away. We found an apartment, not a great one admittedly, which demanded an upfront charge that was quite a bit more than we, being university students, could afford. Her mother agreed to lend her the money that we needed to cover the difference between what we had and what we needed, saying that she needed to be paid back relatively soon. We agreed. We signed for the house as co-tenants and agreed between us to share finances in relation to the flat. This included a shared account for rent, bills, council tax, etc. After around 6 weeks in the new place, my girlfriend decided that she didn't want to commute to the university and that she was going to move to student accommodation instead. I didn't like the idea, as it would cost us a lot, but agreed, as we could afford it with my job and it would mean no commute for her every day. To keep it simple, her mother lent us £2,500 sterling. The overall cost of the tenancy is in excess of £10,000 sterling. My girlfriend agreed to pay off her mother and that I would pay the rent alone, as I'd now be living alone. Again, I agreed as it wasn't a huge deal to me. Here's where the issue comes in. She now wants me to pay her back the £2,500 sterling that she gave to her mother. She argues that she didn't like the place we got, she didn't like the commute, and she needs the money more because I earn more. I was honestly offended that she would go so far as to ask me to not only cover the rest of the tenancy alone, but now to also pay her back for what she already paid into it. I refused point blank, and it's now become a huge mess with many arguments. Am I being unreasonable here? Am I the one at fault? You behaved properly. Her expecting you to cover for her bad decisions without any remorse or gratitude says a lot about her as a partner. Her agreement to and signature on the tenancy documents prove she once liked the place she helped choose. You've already gone along with everything she wanted, so it's unfair for her to ask you to repay the money her mother lent. Decide now if you want to continue dealing with this kind of behavior. Am I the jerk for telling my mom and aunt to stop telling me about our family problems because I don't care? Burner account. Okay, I know how insensitive this sounds, but I just can't take this anymore. I am only 14 years old and my mother and aunt are driving me crazy. The only thing they seem to have any complaints about is the way our family works since my grandfather died in November. I would also like to highlight the fact that I am South Asian, and if you are also South Asian, you might be able to understand what I mean. My father's side of the family has always been extremely dysfunctional, and this has only gotten worse since my grandfather died. Out of all of the 6 children my grandfather had, none of them turned out normal. My father might just be the worst. He takes pride in being the most westernized one and says he did not end up an awful apathetic person like the rest of the people from our ethnicity. He really is just the same. My aunt, my father's sister, has had a very tragic life and does not have a husband or children. I love my aunt, but she is still stuck in the past because of what has happened to her, and she has not done anything in her life. Since my grandfather's passing, things have only gone more and more downhill in my family. It is genuinely so tiring hearing the same thing over and over again about our dynamic from my mother and aunt. The whole inheritance thing is also an issue. My grandfather was not literate in English enough to make a will before he passed, so that probably explains itself. My own aunts and uncles had the audacity to bring me, a child, into their arguments and find some way to involve me. I can't take it anymore. From my mother, it is your father doesn't want to do anything for this family. From my aunt, it is I am so helpless I have nothing and everyone is driving me insane. My aunt's whole thing is being Mujbur. If you know, you know. My father did not even attend his own father's funeral and could not care less about what was going on. He only yelled and cursed at everyone. Everyone calls each other Bagarat or Basharam. One day, while my mother and aunt were just spouting to me about the same thing again, I calmly stopped them and asked them to stop telling me about our family problems because I don't care, and I don't want to hear about the same thing over and over again. They were shocked by this and told me I was being cold and insensitive, but what can I do? They have been complaining about the same people, problems, and topics every single day for the past 9 months. I care about my family, but I feel like I shouldn't have all of these problems dumped on me when I am a child. Shouldn't they keep these discussions for adults only? What am I supposed to do about their financial or emotional problems? They are telling me I am being indifferent and emotionless, but I can't help it. Am I the antagonist? Nothing you have done here makes me think you are the jerk here. It's totally understandable that you're feeling overwhelmed and frustrated, especially since you're only 14 and being dragged into adult problems you can't solve. Setting a boundary and telling them to stop is completely reasonable, and it doesn't mean you're indifferent or emotionless. It's just that you're not equipped to handle these complex adult issues, and they should find healthier ways to deal with their problems without involving you. Am I the jerk for not wanting my brother's family to move into the house beside us? I, a 35-year-old male, have been living with my 34-year-old wife without children. We moved to a nice area and have been staying comfortably for the past 3 years. My 33-year-old brother, Brian, and his 30-year-old wife, Tiffany, are currently staying with our parents. Early in the year, Tiffany gave birth to my nephew. We are Asians, and this is the first baby in our family. Our parents are overwhelmed with excitement. This has led to a lot of friction between Brian, Tiffany, and our parents due to different methods and ways of handling and raising the baby. I agree that my parents have no say in raising their grandchild, but as Asians, it is difficult for my brother to voice his concerns to our parents. Additionally, my mother is a very stubborn person. My brother is planning to move away from our parents' place and into the house beside ours. Tiffany is from out of town and she has no friends around. Hence, my brother thought it would be a good idea to move beside us to help take care of his wife since Tiffany is a stay-at-home mother and my wife works from home. Brian did not inform us prior to meeting with the realtor to view the house, assuming we would be okay with his family moving in beside us. I told him to reconsider as this is a long-term decision of buying a house, and there are plenty of other choices instead of the one beside us. We are very happy with our current lifestyles and are both extreme introverts. We felt really uncomfortable after hearing the news that Brian and his family are planning to move beside us, knowing that my parents will be at Brian's place daily to visit the baby. It would be difficult for us to reject and not entertain them, seeing clearly we are at home. Prior to this incident, our relationship has always been close, and the family is tight-knit. However, for the past weeks, my brother has been acting passive-aggressively towards me, probably due to us not supporting his decision to move beside us. Am I the antagonist for being selfish and not supporting his decision to move beside us? You have done nothing wrong. Your brother is practically forcing you to live in a way you didn't choose, assuming you and your wife will help without even asking. It's unfair when families expect others to give up their lives to help one member, especially when they have made decisions to have more time and money. They are making those decisions themselves and forcing you to take part of the responsibility while preventing you from enjoying the consequences of your own choices. Set boundaries sooner rather than later, even if they get mad, to avoid having your lives revolve around whatever your family wants. Am I the jerk for refusing to drive my van after a terrifying incident? My 2012 Toyota Sienna has over 200,000 miles on it and has recently become unreliable. A few weeks ago, I had a terrifying experience while driving on the highway with my 3 children. I needed to urgently switch lanes to avoid an incident up ahead when the car in front of me cut me off and abruptly stopped in the middle of the lane. I swerved to miss them and slammed on the brakes to avoid going off the shoulder and into a ditch. My car came to an abrupt stop midway in the right lane of the highway, and then it just died. It had no power, would not turn on, and I could not even put it into neutral to push it off the highway. We were literally sitting ducks, with traffic going 65 miles per hour or more, and I was terrified we would be broadsided. As I was calling 911, I was trying to decide if I should have my children get out of the car and stand on the side of the ditch, or if we were safer buckled in the vehicle. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. A kind man stopped to help me, but even he could not get the car to turn on or move. After what felt like an eternity, he managed to get it to start, and it limped onto the shoulder. I was incredibly grateful and called my husband to tell him what had happened and ask him to come and get us so we could tow the van home. To my shock, he refused because he had a Zoom meeting. It was a meeting he attends but does not actively participate in, one that he could have easily been excused from. Feeling completely overwhelmed and not thinking clearly, I ended up driving home in the van. Once home, my husband looked into the issue and believed that the main battery power cord had been disconnected. He cleaned it, tightened the screws, and since then the van has mostly worked fine. However, I no longer feel comfortable driving the van. It let me down when I needed it most, putting my children and me at serious risk. We have the money, both in cash and the ability to finance, to get me a used car to replace the van. But my husband thinks that I should continue driving the van because he believes he fixed the issue and that it runs fine now. So, am I the bad person for refusing to drive the van anymore? You are not the one at fault. And dear God, what is wrong with this man? If the car is so safe, let him drive it and you drive his. It's getting to the end of its useful life and is going to start costing you more than it is worth. Time for a very serious conversation. Would I be the a-hole for calling out someone with cancer and putting them in their place? My father-in-law makes me extremely uncomfortable. From the second time I met him, he would stand next to me, put his arm around my waist, pull me into him, poke my side when he walked past me, and poke my belly when I was pregnant. I am extremely uncomfortable with this and I try to move away, but I feel very awkward. I do not want any man but my husband to touch me, ever. A couple of months ago, while taking my baby from my arms, his hand slowly brushed across my chest. I was so shocked. We were at a big family reunion, and I had had a few drinks, so I felt like I couldn't say anything. I knew he'd just brush it off as an accident. He doesn't listen when it comes to my daughter. I say only kiss the top of her head, but he keeps going for the face. I asked for only grandparents to visit the hospital, and he brought his grandson, who is 18 years old. He just does whatever he wants, regardless of what we say. My plan was to avoid him as much as possible, and it has been working for the most part. But now he's been diagnosed with cancer and, of course, everyone wants to spend more time together. I dread seeing him. Yesterday he showed up to our house uninvited. My whole body tensed up and I wanted to cry. My new plan is to pull him aside and tell him that he makes me extremely uncomfortable and list the reasons why. I will make it very clear that I do not believe the hand grazing my chest was an accident, and tell him that if we are to coexist peacefully in this family, he is no longer allowed to take my daughter from my arms. I will no longer be kissing or hugging him to say hello or goodbye. I will also set some other boundaries. If he doesn't comply, he won't get to see his granddaughter. This is very triggering for me. Being forced to be around a man who makes me so uncomfortable is bringing up a lot of trauma. I just want to find a way to not come between a family going through a difficult time, support my husband, and keep myself safe emotionally, mentally, and physically. Regarding my husband, he is in a very awkward position where he wants to protect me, but feels he can't do anything about me just feeling uncomfortable. I have never told him about the chest grazing incident. So would I be wrong for calling out a man with cancer, putting him in his place, and threatening to go no contact with my daughter if he breaks a boundary or does anything inappropriate to me again? You need to tell your husband everything, absolutely everything, preferably before confronting her. Confront her with your husband both as a witness and for support. It shows you are unified and that everything is in the open. The chest grazing incident should have been addressed a long time ago. You are not the problem, but reinforcing no contact with your daughter without your husband's support will be tough. Am I the jerk for not hugging and subsequently getting into a verbal fight with my dad? I, a 28-year-old male, had dinner with my father, a 60-year-old male recently. My parents are divorced, and I live with my mother. He visits once a week. I had dropped out of university and have been applying to various jobs and courses. The plan was to have dinner out with his sister and for all of us to catch up. On the car ride there and back, he asked me what I was doing. I mentioned that I had recently managed to get an interview for a social marketing part-time job, but it did not go through. I also shared that my application for a course had been approved. He spent both car rides berating, questioning, and disapproving of everything. For example, he said, "The job you applied for is a scam. They just want cheap labor, and why are you applying for a part-time job? You should be applying for full-time jobs." It got worse when he realized that I had only gotten the application approved and had not actually gotten into the course itself. During the dinner, he did not make any of those remarks because the last time he did it in front of his siblings, he got called out on it. After dinner, when he dropped me off, I had spent about 20 minutes each way listening to all this negativity. He got out of the car to hug me goodbye, but I was not feeling too affectionate towards him, so I just turned and walked away. This resulted in him blowing up, yelling at me for disrespecting him, and demanding that we sit down and have a discussion about why I had been acting out towards him. This resulted in another hour of trying to explain my point of view while he kept on going about how I had disrespected him. I know I made a mistake by yelling back at him, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back after 1,000 cuts. I tried explaining to him that I appreciate his advice and all that he has done for me. I just did not like the way he has been saying it my entire life. However, he took it as me not respecting him at all. At this point, I am tired of having to deal with him because every dinner alone is the same song and dance of him being disapproving of my life, even though I am trying to get my things together. He left, saying that he is disappointed in me and the answers I gave him during the fight. I have also been feeling guilty for some of the things that I said. You did nothing to deserve criticism, but this is contingent on actually trying to get your act together. He is bullying you into doing what he thinks you should do, and you don't want his life. You don't need to feel guilty. He asked a question he wasn't mature enough to handle the answer to. From now on, when he asks, just point-blank refuse and tell him he no longer has access to that part of your life. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.